Hello there. How you going? Hope you're having a fantastic day wherever you are in the world. It's morning here, 8:05, so I'll say good morning to all of you, all my subscribers, non-subscribers, trolls, bots, and lurkers alike. Hello and welcome. Just wait a minute. I hope you're all having a fantastic day or night. Hey, Skull. Hey. Where is it? Oh, don't tell me I lost it. I had this ready just a minute ago. Aha, there it is. Here we go. Check this out. This is so funny. Sorry, that's loud in my head. Okay, here we go. The goat on Parliament House. Is it munching on our politicians? The goat has allegedly been a powerful symbol for the occult. Well, again, Kevin Woodman's Google Eye spotted a goat on top of the Parliament buildings in Canberra. Below is the aerial view of Australia's Parliament House. Zooming in closer, do you see the goat? Maybe Kevin's doing too much Googling. Kevin maps it out for us. The eyes are concrete pipes. According to our cult Satanist doctrine, the upper four parts of the goat heads represents the four elements of the world: fire, water, earth, and air. The bottom fifth point represents the spirit of Lucifer. Conspiracists say in the street layout of Washington D.C. the fifth point is the White House. Below, I superimposed half a goat's face over the bird's eye view of the Parliament House, eye for eye, nose over nose, ear, mouth, chin, and all aligning. And Parliament House is all a pyramid as well. And what will Kevin come up with next? That was a funny one. I thought I'd just share that quickly. Hi, Michael Knight. Hi from New Zealand. How you going? How's it over there at the moment? Like, is it locked down? Are you able to move about? We got some pretty crazy stuff going on here at the moment. Okay. Share this one. Discovery of historic Canberra and the centennial tribute to Walter Burley and Marion Mahoney Griffin. Just going to share what I have found. I knew it was really sort of titanic, but yeah. So they had 9 weeks of driving work to get it done from Chicago. Walter Burley Griffin got it, but most of his work was done by his wife, precisely how much we don't know, and also viewed at aerial perspective, full three-dimensional forms. Furthermore, it is a Mandela icon, an allegorical, mystical dream state is not only present a comic city replicate vulnerable urban geometry. It also represents a poetic, visionary Canberra populated with indigenous as well as visiting spirits whose presence, import, and symbolism have eluded the public for just over a century. Painting is also a festive moment, a joyous Easter occasion where publicly celebrates the conception of a new national capital as well as privately rejoining the recent marriage of its creators. The marvelous work defies classification. In some ways it resembles a religious fresco, sacred mosaic, or richly jeweled enamel. Christian artists crowded the walls and ceilings of their churches with gods, devils, angels, saints, and maidens. Marion Mahoney Griffin crammed her dreamscape with very personal images of a country she'd never seen, of its regional inhabitants, yet she presumably knew only from literature, of a cosmic city that did not exist yet. Came to this insight by a curious note. Having studied the magic of America, I formed a hunch about the city and everyone's image. The Griffins were deeply religious, interested in philosophy, as well read, especially in Oriental traditions. Had a copy of James Ferguson's classic history in India, Eastern architecture in their office library. The Griffins were also interested in astrology, cosmology, mysticism, mythology, theosophy, and other historic traditions, including the beliefs of the Australian Aboriginals and the Indigenous American tribes. The Griffins' original plan for Canberra included historic details were first suggested by Peter Muller in his memorial lecture in 1976, and more of these were revealed by Peter Proudfoot, The Secret Plan of Canberra, 1994. This is a book here. I did look it up. I'm going to try and order it from the library. My hypothesis was somewhat more specific on the basis that what I had read, The Magic of America, particular what I found, the Griffin's Canberra plan was of what the Indian theorists called, I can't say that word properly, Vastu in Sanskrit means house or dwelling. Prushna is usually translated as man, but in the combined term, was it Vastu Prushna? It can mean something very like genius loci, the spirit of the place. Mandala originally meant a circle or a wheel, but in this context it means diagram, perhaps an icon. Traditional Indian architecture, a temple has to be planned on a mandala or a diagram, usually a square subdivided by a square grid, which includes a schematic representation of a human figure. The practice probably goes back to ancient foundation rituals involving a sacrifice and burial of a human victim at the temple site. All of this may seem long away from Western town planning, but Leonardo's famous sketch of the Vitruvian Man, or Homo Menstra, 1490, relating to the proportions of the human figure and geometry of square and circle, represents a fairly close analogy of the Vedic Vastu Prushna Mandala. The Griffin's plan for Canberra is based on two principal axes. The primary land axis runs from Mount Ainslie, slight west to southwest of the highest mountains of ACT, Brimby Park, some 52 kilometres away in the Great Dividing Range. The water axis is much shorter. It runs at right angles from Black Mountain, passing just below a small prominence known as Mount Pleasant, near the present Defence Complex and the American War Memorial at Russell. From their ingenious analysis of the competition brief, the Griffins were not only able to position ceremonial Canberra in a magnificent landscape perfectly, as if it had always been there, but also fuse a new city and its pastoral setting into an organic whole by a novel application of a traditional urban geometry. Their solution was represented in a cosmic mandala which reworks the ancient urban symbolism and growing icon while also portraying the ideal capital in a landscape that is both realistic and fantastic. So this is supposed to be the head and the body. Don't know how they managed to draw this when they were living in Chicago. And how did they get it? Like, how come Australians didn't get it? So these are the intersecting lines. There's a Trelawney current that runs through the main building. Ancient temples, big rocks marked mind harmonic telepathic waves linked to the Earth's geomatic field, and so that's what those lines are, and those lines all join here. They all meet here. They go from one mountain to the other. One's positive, one's negative by the sound of it. There's much more rich, dazzling image than meets the eye. At the bottom of this scale, the significance of which is revealed in 2002. 1 unit of scale equals a mile. If we adjust our compass to the unit, we find that it exactly corresponds to the radius of a circle, which, centered in the intersection of the land and water axis, passes both through the centre of Capitol Hill, site of the new Parliament House, and the site of what the Griffins intended to be the second most important building in Canberra, the People's Casino at the foot of Mount Ainslie. At the heart of the Griffin's Canberra, we find an extremely ancient cosmic symbol, the mandala of a circle enclosing a cruise, or St. Andrew's Cross. This became the Egyptian hieroglyph for a city or a town, where the circle represents the tremos, or sacred enclosure of the urban space, and the cross represents the principal streets that divide the town into its four quarters. See Figure 16. The discovery of the land axes of two more circles on the same radius, one central Capitol Hill and the other proposed casino, now the site of the Australian War Memorial, reveals another important matter. The Pythagorean triad. According to the Neoplatonist philosopher, the triad of three equal intersecting circles has the following names, or as we might now say, connotations: proportion, harmonia, marriage, knowledge, everything. Hyactic, goddess of the crossroads, good counsel, piety, and the mean between extremes, oneness of mind, the all friendship. Purpose. Thus disclosed, the grand triad, the land axis, symbolises the ideal unity of the Commonwealth and the harmony that should exist between the people and their government in a well-balanced or proportionate constitution. Most of this public symbolism, entirely appropriate for the ritual centre of the new democratic nation, would also apply to the private world of its creators, the Griffins themselves, particularly their love, marriage and professional partnership. The city and environs image show how the two main axes of Canberra intersect at the centre of the three formal basins of water where the Griffins had planned to create by damming the Mongolo River. Looking at the two outer basins one evening, I suddenly realised they resembled woman's breasts. It had been reported that the Aboriginal equivalent of Canberra meant a a woman's breast, alluding to the shape of Mount Ainslie and Black Mountain, but the Griffiths could have not known that at the time unless they were psychic. I then realised that the breast belonged to a schematic female form whose head is Mount Ainslie, bathed in a rural blaze of light, almost like an electric punk hairdo. My perception of the image was all of suddenly dramatically transformed. So the head of the goddess presiding spirit, Mount Ainslie, with the planet Canberra emanating from her brain. So is this supposed to be the brain? Not quite sure. Looks like it. Next, look down to the land axis, the circle of Capitol Hill, now dominated by the new Parliament House, and recognise the woman's navel. The temple of Apollo at Delphi had a circular stone, orphemus or navel, which was considered to be the sacred centre of the complex and indeed the whole world. Radiating out from the navel of Capitol Hill are two principal avenues which could be her leg. I have found my Vastu Prushna mandala. Sorry, I can't say it, and it was a woman. But there was something still puzzling about the image. Something else was going on. Returning again to Mount Ainslie, I noticed that the figurehead I had just discerned also could be read, Picasso-wise, as facing to her right. Yes, there were two wide-open eyes looking northwest straight along the other principal avenue, running into a kind of place d'atoll at the centre of not just another suburb, but the head of a man. The man represented the traditional darker tones is seen in the profile looking southeast straight at the woman. The embrace of the hero and his heroine, the goddess of Ainslie, in a style of an early movie poster. I finally realised what had been intriguing me about the picture. It had form appearance of an old-fashioned movie poster with a tall, dark hero in profile staring down on the heroine in his embrace. The Griffins were regular moviegoers and they designed one of the world's greatest movie houses, the Capitol Theatre in Melbourne. In June 1911, a few months before they started work on the Canberra competition, Walter and Marion were married. Could this startling sexual image also be a private icon of their new relationship, of their love, marriage, and mutual begetting for their most important creation? If you stand back and look at the poster from a distance, the hero and the heroine appear to be making love, although the two figures are actually joined at a common navel. Given this insight, I soon made another astonishing discovery. Down along the land axis, below the navel, and between the woman's leg, I could now discern several images of children's faces, looking for all the world like somewhat enchanting cherubs floating in the distant clouds of a Braco fresco, except that the images were so stubbily overlaid and interwoven, the same bit of ink or watercolour could be part of several portraits. It's like it's looking at endlessly ambiguous Rorschach test, or other illustrations demonstrate different reproductions of the painting can reveal quite different forms and faces in the background. Two more children are visible in figure 18A, south of Capitol Hill and just east of the land axis. Figure 6, images of hoped-for children that appear between the legs of the goddess. Bits of the other child images also appear in the profile of a large, mature female whose eyes fall on the either side of the red land axis and whose left breast could be the prominence of the Mugga Mugga, south and slightly east of Capitol Hill. Marion was plain Jane, but she was not ashamed of her bosom. The story is still told of how she once received a male visitor for afternoon tea at Cascraig, naked from the waist up. Marion adored children and loved teaching and playing with them, but sadly the Griffins' marriage was to be childless. Having stumbled into a very private Australian dreaming, magically waving faraway Chicago, I became more and more fascinated and obsessed with these amazing pumpless. I soon found many Australian spirits lurking in the dreamscape, such as the Aboriginal and a large koala in the top right corner. Neither image had been easily reproduced, and a fox or dingo looking over the shoulder of an attractive female who has not yet been identified. Readers will easily find other emanated figures not just detailed here in the illustrations of this essay. Note especially the top of figure 18A. I'll show you that one in a minute. Figure 7. A fox or a dingo looks over the shoulder of an attractive woman, especially the large size of her image suggests that she was an important figure in Marion's life. Curiously, the right side of the woman's face is overlaid with much less attractive male visage. Yeah, okay. So now and then we can see human and animal faces looking up through urban grid imposed on their habitat. The Griffins conceived architecture was global organic art, which included town planning and landscape design, and they were fully aware of that any kind of building was necessarily an invitation in a living system. They become experts in Australian landscape and flora in their designing and love of Sydney. Bushland found its finest expression in the design of Castle Craig, Australia's first ecologically planned housing development. And Indigenous human and animal faces look up through the new grid of Canberra. At Castle Craig, Marion painted many of her arresting forest portraits, some of which, like the City and Irons image, contain suggestions of mysterious faces, other animate forms in the foliage. These bush paintings are indeed forest portraits, representations of bush spirits of being of Irish descent. Marion firmly believed in fairies, which she quickly identified with the spirits of the Australian bush. They were visible realities to her and some of her young proteges. Marion's spiritual sensitivity to Australian landscape and its Aboriginal traditions might have been partly due to her American Indian ancestry, though this has been disputed. But whatever her background, inspiration and Indigenous delineing of animal, human, fairy forms in views of architecture and landscape was in fact the standard practice of her graphic technique. Her characteristic method was already evident in architectural renderings she did for Frank Lloyd Wright. Similar faces appear in the backgrounds of the photographs of wild flowers that precede the text, How House Beautiful, a book designed by Frank Lloyd Wright. Her mysterious faces and forms are also found in some of the revised plans for Canberra, as well as Griffin's other Australian schemes. In his last plan for Canberra, 1918, Marion's dreamscape turns into a nightmare. The figures now emanating the landscape are grotesque, horrendous, and evidently expressing the architect's dismay at the changes forced on them. Figure 2 in the third and fourth grid from the bottom of the third left, the stinging image of a mother. Profile to the right, kissing a baby. It's that one. On the center left of the original City of Arvon's image, there's some kind of animal whose outline is accidentally suggested by the Mongolo meandering on the behind the western dam. There's also a female head inside that profile. In a hexagonal precinct in the eastern entry of the Mongolo, there are more animal spirits, including bright-nosed wombat. In the southwestern sector, there's another animal cluster and animals at the end avenue runs southwest from Hero's Head. I spent several weeks poring over the picture, finding and losing these stubble spirits, part of the American magic. Now you see it, now you don't. The trick is to keep looking for eyes. Looking for the eyes is the trick. A wombat, a fox, and a dingo look out from the grid. Many of the hardest figures to detect is also one of the most significant. The configuration of Mount Ainslie includes a cleverly overlaid female face, another aspect of presiding goddess and the spirit of the place. If you look at the lines radiating from the pinnacle of Mount Ainslie, the one running directly south goes between her eyes and the left of her nose and the right of her mouth. Her right eye is looking straight down on the land axis. The head, is which now appears to be floating above Mount Ainslie in the true aerial perspective, surveys the new city in a scene triumphant. The head is clearly visible in Figure 3, where the blue circle passes just above her eye. Figure 11, the goddess of Mount Ainslie surveys her masterpiece. What the presiding goddess saw in Marion's prophetic vision is revealed at the presentation of watercolored entered view from the summit at Mount Ainslie. This sublime panorama of the envisioned city of view Mount Ainslie along its principal axis, which terminates in the magnificent and mythicized Brimby Park. The Tropicek is not just an artist's impression of how the future city might appear upon completion, it is also a landscape in the oldest sense of the term, a theatrical scene painting. But this image depicts both spiritual and spectators. The view from Mount Ainslie is being observed by an audience of local spirits suggested by the outlines of the trees' foliage in the foreground. To the external viewer, this larger scene is thus a crowded pageant, a choral prologue to the national drama of Canberra. Mount Ainslie is of Canberra the starting point as well as the principal viewing point of the city plan, and according to Stan Morris, the source of a powerful flow of telluric energy that reaches distant Brimby Park. It now appears obvious and undeniable that the Griffins intended Ainslie to be a sacred mountain of Canberra. Perhaps they also imagined the irradiating landscape with a furnicate feminine power at the foot of the majestic mountain bosom. They planned to erect the People's Casino, which is the War Memorial, a popular meeting place for lively young democracy. The Australians turned the monument to democratic life into a mausoleum, the Australian War Memorial. But if you put all that carnage and suffering behind you, you look out with the goddess along her main axis, you can still feel something of its intended power and significance. The eye is carried irresistibly down the slope to the water, symbolic life, source of all life, across the old Parliament House and over its looming successor to Red Hill and beyond the distant Brindleblaze, and the hazy dreaming of the endless bush. The view corresponds to the commanding sight lines that radiate out from the classical Greek temples to the Horn Hills and other sacred sites so eloquently addressed by Vincent Scully in 1962-91. Marion's gorgeous celebration of Canberra is not only a historic mandala, an intricately icon, but also a multifaceted image in the round, and forcibly declares the Griffin's philosophy of organic planning and its deepest respect for living things. With the experience of Cascraig, the Griffins finally become the true founders of a distinctly Australian art of landscape design and environmental planning. But this remarkable American painting turns out to be the first great statement of that school, and it remains an important key to its formative philosophy. Though cruelly mutilated in its execution, the Griffin city survived and still lives, growing out the landscape and drawing life from it. Just as Marion's original vision, the childlike figures of Red Hill and Mugga Mugga emerged from the goddess body and taking their sustenance from the nearby bush, the hills, the creeks, the ridges, so mutely detailed, just look like bosoms, veins, and arteries. But these same delinearies also take on disturbing forms. For example, there is a cranky old man on the bottom left corner looking to his left. His nose is turned upward towards a small circle that resembles a pendulum weight hanging from the centre of what now is Yalimba. Some of the many failings in the realisation of Canberra are quietly acknowledged in the Griffin legacy. Figure 12, a cranky old man, Marion's father, with perhaps his more kindly wife. Another vision of this image is visible in the bottom left corner, figure 16. On the right side of the ball is another kind of female looking intently at him. Did Marion, a precocious, rebellious tomboy, have a problem with her father? As well as a public celebration, there is a great deal of private dialogue going on in this dreamscape. Very obvious that the goddess of Mount Ainslie is looking West Picasso style over her lover's shoulder and speaking into what looks like a megaphone. It's actually a sketch of a proposed railway station, see figure 5.1. This is a joke referring to her nagging. Marion used to call herself Xanaphe after Sir Croat's nagging wife, though she frankly admitted that her nagging had absolutely no effect on her husband. Walter had an abundance of seminal ideas, but Marion was the one who had to go through the agony of bringing his creatures into the world. If we are correct in viewing the city and environs, the image is private as well as public icon, then there are two other visits that demand our attention. One is a female face in the profile whose left eye is just to the left on the red line running south from Mount Ainslie. She just gazes directly west, her sharp nose sticking out towards the casino or war memorial site. She looks just like a mother watching over her house, her garden, and her children. The irregular stretch of water to the southeast could be a skirt. Her womb is suffused with a mysterious inner light that emanates from another magical symbol, the cosmic mandala in miniature, and the proposed site of Canberra's first church, presumably the architect's own proposal for an interdenominational place of worship. Dare say that would be a Mason church. Above the skirt, her torso is filled with animal figures, including a couple of wombats. Here is another spirit of the place, the face, the nose, a bit too sharp perhaps, the swept back hair and essentially the air of intelligent confrontation leave little doubt for this self-portrait of caricature of the artist herself, who seems to be looking towards another head in the profile, clearly delineated by the track around Black Mountain. There are several photographs of Marion's head in the profile, presumably the view she preferred of herself, just as her paintings or drawings are sometimes based on photographic images. So the city and Iron's image was elaborated from the Griffin's larger plan of Canberra, which extended well beyond the central area designated in the competition brief. But the result is much more than just a plan of city and Irons. The painting is a glorious celebration of the ideal city, its cosmic analogue to soul marriage. It is a masterpiece of which filled every eye for almost 90 years, and it must be admitted, a trick of breathtaking audacity, a wonderful joke. The last significant face is harder to make out. It is the head of a serious, severe man inclined to his left, looking out towards the southeast. His downturned mouth is dark pitched just east of the Black Mountain. His bushy eyebrows are just southwest of the avenue that radiates from Hero's braids. His receding hairline merges with the black of Hero's head. Takes a while to get the fix on him, but once you see somebody who is obviously important, could he be the man who brought Marion, Lucy Mahoney, and Walter Burley Griffin together in his Chicago office, who inspired, informed, angered, and escalated them both, but recognized Marion's genius by making her his head draftsman? I must leave it to those who have had the opportunity of studying the original painting to decide whether the figure is Walter Early partner, Frank Lloyd White, whom the artist once loved and surveyed well for 14 years. There's so much hidden in art, and art means no. In June 2003, Judith announced her discovery that the Southern Cross configuration is repeated in the layout of the National Capital's major sites, both in position of the star to the national site and ratio of size of the star to the size of the specific sites. To confirm her discovery, she obtained a star map of the constellation Crookes from Parkes Observatory at Mount Stromlo and laid it over the plan of central Canberra. Her nations indicate the places of central Canberra matches the stars of the Southern Cross. The map also shows how Aspen Island in the site on the National Carlin, opened in 1970, corresponds exactly to the position of the fifth star of the Southern Cross, the Epsilon Crucis. That one. I wonder if that's why they have a place there called Epsilon, which was not part of the Griffin's vision, an inexplicable coincidence, unless they are now psychic somehow involved. So it goes on about the symbolism of the sacred geometry, using a star. They use dowsing, divining. My granddad used to do it. They use a pendulum, short string chain held over a map picture, a landscape movements of the pendulum he formed and gave me similar results to dowsing. All news to me. Goes here where they got a boat and the driver claimed to be psychic, and they went to douse the part of the Griffin plan that is now underwater under the inappropriately named Lake Burley Griffin, which wasn't part of the original plan. On the boat, Stan Morrison was using his favourite dowsing rods, which were made out of two coatings, bent into L shape, held loosely by the shorter arms with the longer arms parallel to the ground. As we crossed the land axes at the water's edge of the North Parliament House, Stan's rods started fluctuating wildly. He declared this to be a significant sight. Judith pointed out that is exactly where Griffith had planned a ceremonial watergate to the Capitol Hill complex. Goes where they go to another place using the wire coatinger. They were commenting about the amount of energy from the ground was very high, possibly dangerous. Asked him where the energy field could have ended. He decided that the boundary was exactly marked by the enclosing roadway, which is in the shape of a dewdrop. In his opinion, the plan of the roadway had been determined by someone's dowsing. I pointed out that the shape of the park had been changed in various Griffith plans for the area, which suggested that these revisions may have been done as a result of someone dowsing in stew. While Walter was engaged in daily struggles with Canberra bureaucracy, no one would have taken any notice of his wife's activities. Goes on about the red lines on the maps. They are where the electricity in the ground is. The city in Emma's image includes an elaborate matrix of lines in closely spaced red dots, some of which have been overdrawn and extended in red to make continuous lines, though their presence of significance have never been noticed by the Griffin literature. Judith McConaughey had been aware of the red lines for some time. The red lines in the city and environments intrigued me for years, but I've always felt there were hidden code to them. For as an artist, I know that anything placed in the body of an artwork is a deliberate decision by the artist. In this case, Marion Mahoney Griffin, who executed City and Environs, I initiated that there would come a time when my intention would focus on their decoding. I'm more than delighted that I'm intended. I feel this is a final research into finding hidden and historic aspects of the Griffith winning design. Same report, Judith recorded some of the discussions we had, included transparency showing just the red lines would be like a confirmation of our theory, a real picture, energy pattern of Canberra. She responded, I can't believe I can enhance the red lines by hand on this image of the city and environs that will clearly show the matrix without lifting this design. I will carry out what you ask, but I don't think it will add any more clarity. It could add magic to the presentation to lay down the matrix over the city and environs. Stan and I are using the matrix on city and environs so that we can get our bearings when comparing with present-day road maps to find the energy flow and stew. So it goes on about the colour coding challenge to the artist to show intelligently all this info relate to the cross of the multiple axis and the land axis and other energy centres. I've already enhanced the red line. So apparently it was supposed to have been done by dowsing, but I don't know. The Griffiths didn't do it, did they? They would have been looking at the heights of mountains. A map of Australian capital territory gave the heights of Ainslie, Black Mountain, Mugga Mugga and Broomby. Land axis goes right to the highest mountaintop, Mount Broomby. The line between Mount Ainslie and Mount Broomby is quite significant in the sense that Marion pinpointed Broomby as an excellent sight line to follow in alignment of Canberra. There is an energy field from Broomby to Mount Ainslie. It's normally known as the telluric current, and they always go in pairs. This is well known in dowsing circles. Red lines are the key. No one has ever studied them. Red lines show where the energy are. She didn't just draw red lines because of nice geometrical panic. If all those energy or tronic currents are correct, then it's going to throw a whole new ball game. We've got to accept that she was a dowser and there's no way she could have. So she's put this matrix down and he's married it to the landform. That's right. There's no other way you can look at it. If the telluric current's definitely coming from Mount Ainslie and Black Mountain, there's no other way you can be picked up other than by dowsing. When she overlaid the transparency of the red lines map onto Scrivener's 1914 map and Walter's last signed up 1918, the cross of energy lines in the matrix closely matched the two axes of the multiple axes in the land axis in the Griffin plan. So in August 2004, Stan Morris reported the outstanding results of his map on rod dowsing and the tellurite currents, thus delivering a complete confirmation of our hypothesis on the origin of the plan of Canberra. All the lines radiating out from Mount Ainslie were first drawn as a series of red dots, and some were then lightly overdrawn in the same colour. The original red dots at the northern end of the land axes are not visible in high resolution image, but can be seen at low resolution image. So there's energy coming out from that mount. That's supposed to be the railway station, is it? Found 3 levels of energy. Really interesting. So this is the design winning, the formative circle and the cross at the heart of the original Griffin plan. And this is where all that energy meets. All meets there. It comes from this mountain. And this mountain, I think, is the one where they have the tower. They call it Echelon. Cosmic design, any doubts or reservation about our hypothesis and the secret planning of Canberra were resolved at meetings the first day of the National Library. The team is now unanimous that Griffiths had mapped out the general plan for Canberra in a competition brief, Chicago 1911, and produced a map resembling Judas's red lines matrix, which he had reconstructed from the markings on the city's environs image. We all agreed that Canberra's energy map unquestionably provided the outline for the plan of Canberra, particularly the orientation of the principal axes, but also many other details. The lines of the red dots in the city's enviros image indicated that Griffin's dowsing had identified 2 possible cross-axes for their plan, but what had become of the water axes in the final plan appears to be an arbitrary line drawn halfway between Capitol Hill and the side of the proposed casino, which is the War Memorial, at the foot of Mount Ainslie. The 2 parallel energy lines identified by dowsing were also incorporated into the competition plan. The first in the location of Constitution Avenue on the multiple axes, and the second in the centering of the 2 breast-like basins of the original waterworks. These natural subordinate axes are marked in broken red lines in the city and environs image, which were reproduced by Judy McConaughey's second transparency. Unfortunately, some of these dotted lines appear to be unbroken in the published facsimile of city environs. Much more information on the secret planning of Canberra will be learned from further analysis. Looks like some of Beethoven. Oh, he lost 2 people. That's sad. Sad. I don't get this. They said they were in Chicago and everything. They'd never seen the site. And it says here, she would have applied her pendulum or rods to the plaster model of Canberra landscape and some or all of the competition materials that came in 25 wooden boxes as soon as possible. Close relationship between Griffin competition plan and the energy points independently identified by Stan Morrison leave little doubt that Marion's dowsing was a fundamental step in the design process. If she was the dowser responsible for discovering the energy point and flows of Canberra District as recorded in the city environs image, then she must be recognised as the least of the surveyor of the original plan. Furthermore, by her dowsing on the site, she may have played a discrete role in the actual laying out of the city. But, yeah, I don't know. They had originally planned to locate the city's first church on Peace Harmony Hill, a prominence just north of the eastern end of the Constitution Avenue. This temple would have been the earthly monument representing the Delta Crius, just as City Hall represents the opposite star, Beta Crius. Corresponding to the top star, Gamma Crius, is the location of Griffith's proposal for the casino, so now the site of the War Memorial. Thus, the form of the Southern Cross was to be enshrined into 4 major centres of the new city. The stellar configuration of central Canberra was a masterstroke, a brilliant exercise in the grandest tradition of urban planning, going back to at least Egyptian alignment of the pyramids of Giza and the stars of Orion's belt. Not only that, it gave a unique cosmic rationale to the form of Canberra, the significance of which has eluded nearly all of its residents, as well as a long line of interested historians, planners, and other commentaries for just over a century. And the all high school students have to go to Canberra and visit Parliament House as part of their curriculum. I think it's year 11 or 12. They all have to do it. So they're well informed, both Oriental and Occidental, I'm sure. Yeah. They must have had more than 9 weeks' notice. No. This is the building they were supposed to have built, Capitol Theatre in Melbourne, before building the whole Canberra. They just don't build like that anymore, do they? Huh? Original lights. Heritage Victoria required this light button to be shown to show the historic light system. Ceiling. Bit of occult stuff going on. So yeah, they were supposed to have built it, had the first large organ to come to Australia. The closest Pythagoreans in celebrating the geometry of Canberra, the Griffins twice incorporated the Pythagorean triad of 3 intersecting circles of ancient symbol, harmony, musical, morale, political, and so on. See Figure 3, their converted Pythagorean philosophy and its overt geometrical symbols were further developed in the design of Capitol Theatre, Melbourne, opened 1924. This great building, I maintain, is an acron microcosm for Canberra itself, a second try, so to speak, after the federal disaster in its grand design. The Capitol Theatre, the significance of its name is unmistakable, almost unchemical redistillation in the same metaphysics from which the Griffins compounded their Canberra, but in a novel architectural form that is still manifestly Pythagorean in many details. See Figure 17, the ancient world of animism, so vividly expressed in Marion's graphic arts, so quintessentially Pythagorean. The Griffins, interested in anthropology, as is well known, but in my opinion, their quite committed classic Pythagorean played far more potent role in their living, thinking, and designing. They were well ahead of the worldwide revival in the interest of Pythagoras and the Pythagorean traditions, a completely unexpected development in the 20th century, though which has bemused academic philosophy and science. This latest resurgence on Pythagoreanism will probably throw more new light on the genius work of Walter Burley and Marion Griffin, their profound architectural ideas and their greatest work, Secret Planning of Canberra. So this is the building, the theatre one, that's the entrance there, that's the geometry with the sacred lines. Goes on here about the red lines and the true currents. How could they have known? The Aboriginals would have known too. They were high energy points. Pendulum dowsed over the red lines and reproduction, as well as pendulum dowsing of a map of Canberra with the same idea. Identified energy currents. So they did that. The land and water axes were shown in unbroken line. The remainder were executed in broken line. The small line at Mount Mugga and Blackmar provide mark energy currents in direction, strength, and length as well, as was the case with the other lines. Some red lines could not be accessed because the layout of the ground was different to the initial concept of the city environs. For example, the eastern beginning of the water axis cannot be accurately identified because the lake does not follow to the Griffin design. But when the dowsing of the current map of the Canberra, the energy currents are exactly where the red line matrix is cited. So I'll leave these links in the description for you. I think this is a really good read. I'll try and find the other video I've seen years ago about Parliament House with all the hidden some symbols. There's lots of hidden symbols. So there's Mount Ainsley, Black Mountain. You have the woman at the bosom, Mount Mangala. These are the energy lines, the red lines. So it's pretty amazing. They drew them out there. So yeah, thanks if you're with me still. Thanks for watching. I don't know if I'll go live, but yeah, you have a fantastic day wherever you are in the world. Raise your vibrations. Much love. Bye. Okay, so yeah, that was that one. I wanted to share that. That is interesting because they were in Chicago. They had 8 weeks to design this. They designed this beautiful laid out city in the Southern Cross design. How would they see the Southern Cross design when the Southern Cross is not in the Northern Hemisphere? And how was it done within 8 weeks? How did she find the ley lines so quickly as well? I and they only become an architecture just as they were leaving to Australia to go there. They become architects. So this video I'm not going to play fully, but this poor girl is just totally.
Stories like mine.
I'll mute it. Hang on. If I play it, stuff it. Watch this. How horrible is this? This is horrible. I've got another young girl I follow on YouTube here. She had the HPV one and done the same to her. Done the exact same to her. When they run, they seem to be all right, but when they walk, this is what happens. I just pray that this is stopped. I don't want it to go ahead, you know. I'm going to show you a video of what happened to me. I was made to wear a mask the other day to get government service. They told me wear a mask or no government service. They refused to see my medical certificate, saying that people are showing fake medical certificates, and he did not believe me that my medical certificate was from my doctor. I refused to put it on fully. I just held it up near my face. He made me, and within a minute of doing it, I had an asthma attack. Within a minute, I had to get my puffer out of the bag, all that sort of stuff. Check out my Twitter. I can't make that any bigger. Yeah, within a minute, I have a asthma attack. I get in the car. Same thing. I get home and I can't get it under control, and I end up having to use the nebulizer. And it's not because I'm belligerent and don't want to. So forced to hold a mask up to my face for help from government service. They didn't even ask to see medical certificate. They just demanded to wear a mask or no service. My face was covered for a few minutes and then spent over a day with having severe attacks and not able to breathe. Thanks. So this is what happens when you force people.
This is what happens when I have to wear a mask. My asthma will be like this for the next 24 hours now. I had an asthma pretty much as soon as it was put on within a couple of minutes. I shouldn't have to explain my medical condition. I shouldn't be forced to have to wear one. Under the Disability Discrimination Act, you cannot discriminate. It even says it on the federal government website. People with respiratory conditions should not wear a mask. I didn't choose to have this. I was born with this. I was born, I had croup and whooping cough as a baby. All my life I got sick. I had a flu shot every year as a protection for my asthma, so I don't get pneumonia or bronchitis every year. I don't need people to tell me how to look after my health. You didn't care about me years ago when I caught influenza.
I caught influenza, and I actually caught a rare strain of bird flu when I was working at a chicken farm. I worked on the eggs where they were cracked on the light, and I used to go and collect eggs in the afternoon, and I picked up a rare bird flu off the chooks. The whole pen had to be killed. Basically, 500,000 chooks had to be euthanized because of it. The health department come in. The whole pen had to be cleaned out. I ended up in hospital on a respirator, heart and lung machine. That was the second time I had been on a heart and lung machine, because a few months prior to that, I had swine flu. They didn't have the setups they have now, and I ended up in the Brisbane Mater Hospital with a 12-month-old child. Both of us had it.
I didn't take the flu shot. Just stop telling me, stop giving people death scares if they don't have a mask on. My father has a pacemaker and heart conditions, and now wears a mask because he's sick of having to explain himself. He's tired of it. He can barely walk 10 steps without being packed. And now I've got to put up with his nebulizer for the next 24 hours. Because that's what happened when he got severe paranoid, man. It gets triggered 24 hours. Thanks. Haven't been. Bye.
How many did I have before that? I never used to have. I had one pneumonia shot before that, and I ended up really sick. That was when I was in Sydney, and I refused to have it after that. And then I used to get probably 4 or 5 times a year. I would get pneumonia, and then they gave me a flu shot once, and that whole year I didn't get sick. But prior to that, as a child, I had whooping cough and croup. My mother fully vaccinated me way back when I was a baby when I didn't have a choice. I always got tonsillitis as a child, and when I was 13, they removed my tonsils, which was the biggest mistake my mother ever did. She should have said no, but they did it because I was always on antibiotics, and they were worried that I would become something would happen and they'd become resistant to the antibiotics. So they decided to chop my tonsils out. And after that, it's every time I walked past someone that was sick, I would get sick, and it just goes straight to my lungs. I think it's just normal influenza, Stu. I really do. But I can't help it, like once I have it, it's not changing my DNA, and I don't want to have it. But I'm a single mother. My eldest two are 23 and 21, but I've still got a 15-year-old that relies on me, and I can't go and not be there and healthy for these children. So yeah, if I don't, I'm damned. And if I do, I'm okay. But what is it doing to my body? Is it going to give me Alzheimer's? Like I've noticed, I've had it for the last 5 years. I've had the flu shot, and in that 5 years, I have noticed my memory is like little things. Like I'll go out to the shops or something, and I'll forget something, and I'll have to go back. And it's just really frustrating. I'm starting to notice that, but yeah. So I think, was that it? Yeah, that was that one and that one. Um, oh, they want to put right 1,000-bed quarantine facility at Pinkenba, which is right next to the airport. Also, to get into Queensland now, if you're a essential worker, you have to have this before you can come into Queensland. They will not let you in. Now, the truck drivers have said, we are not having it. We will park up, and if they're going to make us, we'll just turn around and go back. So I know a few truck drivers that are about to strike. They will strike. There was a strike decades ago, Razorback Mountain in the strike, where they were striking over pay rates and all that. Yeah. So yeah, you know, it's just to keep everyone in fear. It's what. Um, then you got your stuff like this with his mental health, 33-year-old actor that dies, you know. Here, this one. A Western Sydney official has compared the latest anti-measures imposed in his area by New South Wales state government to the times of Nazi Germany. His comment, since removed, caused a rumpus on social media. Mayor Steve Christo of Cumberland City Council tweeted an official graphic illustration new lockdown rules on Friday, having posted the image that warned residents of the mandate that requires them to have a permit to leave the region and to register their personal details to be allowed to visit a single buddy within 5 kilometres. A buddy is a fuck mate. 3 Mile Reach. He wrote, "Welcome to Nazi Germany." The comment from the councillor, who describes himself as having a tendency to speak what I think, was later deleted. And this is from the mayor. And in my other video, you saw where they're proudly saying the NWO. And yeah. Hi, Alan. Just saw you there. Just noticed you there. Just showing some of the crazy stuff that we're going through here in Australia. So they're trying to divide the people, basically. It's really hard to talk to my mum at the moment because she's been vaccinated, and the other day, Cairns was put on a lockdown, and I said to her, "Well, why are you staying home and quarantining?" I said, "You've been vaccinated and you're all right." And she says, "Oh, no, we've got to quarantine as well. We've got to stay home as well." I said, "Well, what's the point in having the vaccine?" "Oh, I'm just doing my part to help the community." So, yeah, it's just a bit, it's dividing families. My family's getting divided over it. But these troops here, look how many, um, it's just horrible that people have to live like this in a democratic country. It's just ridiculous. The USA and Afghan and China, I don't know if anyone is paying attention to what's going on. You know, the Chinese Uyghurs, we were seeing all about, we'd hear it in the news that, they were locked up and being making gift Christmas stuff and all that sort of stuff. Well, Afghanistan, using conservative estimates, the US has spent 2.261 trillion and the UK 30 billion weapon sales and the provisions of other service to the war front, which has been rapidly privatized and has led to large enterprises making an absolute killing. Afghanistan is unprecedented success for those who profit from the racket of war and raise themselves up from the destruction of others. Iran, this fellow, was put into the power with the help of the CIA and its friends. On July 11, 1953, Eisenhower gave presidential approval for Operation Ajax, the very first CIA coup, and Moscow was removed from power. The coup wouldn't start a historical tidal wave that led to suffering of the people in Iran. Government-sponsored fake news is brainwashing the American public into accepting a new US NATO-sponsored Cold War with China. Improved healthcare programs in Xinjiang have contributed life expectancy, increasing there from 31 years in 1949 to 72 currently. In 1949, there were 54 medical centers in Xinjiang. Now there are more than 7,300 healthcare facilities and more than 1,600 hospitals. Literacy has increased from 10% to more than 90% in the same period. Average income of Xinjiang has increased more than 10% since 2017. Over the past generation, Washington and the CIA have provided ongoing support to the Uyghur separatist organization and terrorist groups such as the Turkestan Islamic Party, led by Abdul Haq al-Turkestani. The TIP, originally calling itself the East Turkestan Islamic Movement, received direct CIA funding and sponsorship. He has served on Al Qaeda Executive Leadership Council. Does China's rise really threaten the US, or is it just a psychopathic power? Sorry, I was just reading. Hi, Scotty. It's great to see you, Alan. We got Spanish chicken. So in the 1950s and 60s, Afghan women were able to be educated. Eisenhower visited in 1959. He did not like the fact that Afghanistan was friendly with Russia. Afghanistan in 1961. The CIA plan was to use the Taliban to advance its agenda. The CIA complicity in the global drug trade. Above, we see Afghanistan in the 1960s before Jimmy Carter regime decided to put mad Muslims into power. Operation Cyclone was the code name for the CIA program to arm and finance the Afghan Mujahideen in Afghanistan. In Afghanistan and elsewhere, Al-Qaeda was run by the CIA and its friends. Reportedly, America created Al-Qaeda and the ISIS terrorists. Taliban vows to respect the rights of Afghan women and will allow access to work, educational, as if they will. Yeah, as if they will. So, if China and them work together, that's a hell of a big army, and then they would have the land they need. Um, yeah. Um, there's been a thing that, got to be careful how I say this. Cairns New has been alerted to the possibility that elderly Australians in care institutions are being given dangerous sedatives that may be killing them as part of treatment. This drug has a choking side effect that is very similar to the symptoms of these ones. I'm not going to say their names. I'm not like a doctor. I'm not giving advice. I'm not telling you what to do. YouTube. So they had a bill in 2014, I think the bill was, um, and they lifted it and then they brought it back. Should this bill pass as it is, disabled people will be forced to rely on family volunteers to provide support that is currently provided by trained paid personal assistant care agencies or residential home workers. Afghanistan is far and away the country where creative associate projects have secured the most funding combined with its Iraq enterprise. The company has raked in well over $500 million worth of government contracts. Even losing wars makes money. If you go to the DC area in Virginia and Maryland suburbs, there are all types of companies that exist because of war, and the development industry got very wealthy off it, said Matthew Ho, a former Marine captain and Department of Defense state official. Investigative journalist Glenn Greenwald stated that the end goal of the newly emerging war on the domestic is to essentially criminalize any oppositional ideology to the ruling class. You know what that means, don't you? This isn't a partition issue, but something that's been in the works for decades. Greenwald stated that the viewing Washington as a Democrat versus Republican, with one side being your team and the other being your enemy, is a flawed belief, as the elite ruling class is truly in power. And that's correct. They're selected. They're not elected. You don't elect them. That's the biggest thing. I think Kashmir will be. Yeah, I just saw that comment. What is it in those countries that they're after? There has to be something there, whether it's archaeology or biblical or something like that. It's got to be. I'm not. Am I sharing my screen with you? I'm not. Sorry. I was reading from a page. I didn't know. Hang on. Let me fix that. Sorry. My apologies. I apologize. Hang on. I just noticed. I'm so sorry. I think it's this one. It should be. Yeah, this is the one I was reading. My apologies. I'm so sorry. Apologize. Wow. Whitney Webb draws parallels between the present day and US-backed Operation Condor, which targeted leftists, separatist leftists, and their sympathizers, resulting in the murders of an estimated 60,000 people, about half of which occurred in Argentina. Another 500,000 were politically imprisoned. Silicon Valley is fused with the national security state. New research published online in the Journal of American Medical Association, the new study published shows 1 in 100,000 people had related myocarditis, and 1 in 8 in 100,000 people had pericarditis, compared to the data of 4.8 people per 1 million suffer myocarditis after receiving. Myocarditis is inflammation of the heart muscle that can lead to cardiac arrhythmia, death. According to researchers, National Organization for Rare Disorders, myocarditis can result from infections. More commonly, the myocarditis is a result of the body's immune reaction to initial heart damage. And I got heart damage when I got electrocuted. I can't be tased with the taser. Apparently, it can throw me into cardiac arrest. It's written on the police file. So this is where the mad Muslims were put in. I was just reading. Was that fake corpse used from a Thai protest used to mislead? I saw one the other day where there was a corpse, and it was in China, and he had the body bag open and he had a cigarette. He was laying on the top. I just cracked up. Yeah, tasers are really, really bad. Yeah, yeah. Ah, so they ban as it takes over Afghanistan. What? Okay. Top 10 private equity firms: Apollo Group Management, Blackstone Group, Carlyle Group, KKR and Company, Arcs Management, Oak Tree Capital Management, Fortress Investment, Ryan Capital, TPG Capital, Arden. Unreal. They got too much control. Way too much control. Fully vaxxed Hollywood celebs are wondering why they're suddenly getting cancer and worse. That's the latest one, is cancer and women having really strange menstrual cycles. I was reading before about a woman that was going through, like, had been through menopause, and she got another menstrual cycle after being near a person. I do know that women, like other mammals, if they're ovulating, they set a pheromone off and they will ovulate. But this is just totally unreal what's happening to these people. Yeah, Spanish chicken, that's, yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's amazing how the Afghanistan prime minister just, loaded up his plane and took as much money and gold as he could and left. That's unreal. LDS churches endorses. What? No way. Here we go. Look at the revenue. 18.98 billion in the second quarter of 2021, but only 7.8 billion was the. That's a lot of money. In addition, they also sell the blood thinner to minimize clots. Ha ha! I didn't know that. Huh. Oh, so they sell. Well, they got it on both sides, don't they? Sorry to hear that, Nicole. Yeah, ticks. I got bitten by a tick when I was about 18 months, and they couldn't find it. It was in my hair. I was up in the hospital. I was, like, pretty much paralyzed. It was paralysis tick. And every time Mum ran her hand through my hair, I'd scream. And they found it. And years ago, I suspected I had Lyme disease. And I went to a doctor, and he's like, no, no, we don't have Lyme disease in Australia. And I've been bitten by several ticks. And I've even got, huge scars from where I had infections from them. But yeah, they say there's no Lyme disease in Australia, when in fact there is Lyme disease in Australia. Yeah. The Beatles and other mind-controlled kids. Oh, here we go. I was talking about the Batman and the clown stuff the other day, wasn't I? They do have a thing for Batman and the Joker. Killer's inspiration. Plymouth gunman Jake Davison's rampage was inspired by a violent 2019 film, Joker. Evil Plymouth gunman Jake Davison's rampage was inspired by a violent 2019 film, Joker. In a rant from his Professor Waffle YouTube channel, he told how he identified too well with Jacqueline P. Unreal. Unreal. Scouts. Yeah. Unreal. I think I was going to show you something else quickly if I can find it. Oh, yes, I have found it. That's what I want to share. Oh, cool. It's sharing the page. Is it? No? Okay, so stop that one. Share. Sorry, I was just looking for the page on. I've got so many tabs open. I need to close some tabs before. Okay, that one. No, that's not the one I was after. Um, Sorry, I was just trying to find how I share this. Sorry, everyone. I'm getting there. Hang on. Sorry, everyone. I'm getting there. Can you hear me? Hope so. That one? Yeah. I'll just share this one. It's not the one I want to show you. Um, but it just shows you like from the start of what I showed. I think this one's Washington. Right, you got the owl symbol. And then check this out. Australia's Parliament House, right? And how it's all stoic. But look how alike they are. Like, it's just unreal how the layouts are done. It's supposed to be the headquarters, where I've heard that for decades. I really have. It's not the one I really want to share. Hang on. I have to close some screens. Oh, it's so frustrating. I've got it right here and it won't. Okay, hopefully this is it. Thought I had StreamYard worked out, but obviously I haven't. I haven't been sharing for a while. I've been so busy. Aha. I think I have it this time. Okay. Parliament House was designed to by Freemasons to resemble sacred geometry. Time to drop some knowledge bombs on you, Canberra. Like the number 13, the occult, the Freemasons, the $5 note, the pyramids for real. So uncovering Canberra's dirty secrets, and it's time you recognise what's going on here. It has a long history in Australia, and it certainly does. I wanted to come down and read a comment. Was it the next one? This is why I like to record before I go on. Okay, so what I wanted to share about Canberra is the Bavaria. How do you say that word? Bavaria. Yeah. In 1813, King Ludwig I of Bavaria commissioned Austrian John Trotsky to explore the New World of Australia. Bavaria is the alleged home of the Bavarian Illuminati, said to be the home of the powerful Rothschild banking family. Allegedly, the Bavarian Illuminati had founded on May 1776 by Adam Weishaupt in an order of the Rothschilds to advance their agenda and control of the New World lands. And don't forget that Queen Victoria and all of them as well, they're all Rothschilds. Same as the Danish kings and queens, the German Kaiser, the Russian Tsar, they were all related. First question I ask you is, why would the King of Bavaria be interested in Australia? Lukashki spent a considerable amount of time searching the southeastern tablelands looking for limestone plains. He found them in both the Canberra region and also on the Dalgety-Munro plains. He found both sites unsuitable for future cities. In 1834, Lukashki predicted that on the Kimberley Plains, now Canberra, at the not distant date, a fine town will exist at that location. Rather presumptuous of him to suggest such a thing so accurately far in advance, but I am willing to give a benefit of the doubt that he would simply found the land suitable for future settlement. Taking a more cynical viewpoint, you could suggest that perhaps a city of limestone plains on the Cambry had been suggested for as early as the 1830s within political circles. Lukashki was a botanist, the same as Joseph Banks, who, as luck would have it, was the one who suggested the expedition down south to the Pacific to study and observe the 1769 transit of Venus. As the scientist, Banks, also chief advisor King George III, was taken on the trip by one Captain Cook. Now, Cook wasn't a captain, he was a master. It was on this voyage that they haphazardly discovered Australia. No, they didn't. The Chinese and the Dutch discovered Australia well before them. Banks, as a confirmed Freemason, had been initiated into the Inverness Lodge number 4367. He later became president of the Freemason Royal Society of London. This was a society that financed his said scientific expedition that discovered Australia. On a side note, the transit of Venus is important to the occultists because during the 8-year trek, Venus passes in front of the Sun the same monthly pattern 5 times and traces a 5-pointed star pattern around the ecliptic. A 5-pointed star is the pentagram, the symbol revered by occultists. On the other side note, Sydney is considered by some as the occult capital of the world. Now, all of Sydney's government buildings are number 10. All of England's government buildings are number 10. Number 10 Downing Street, for example. Same as Sydney, they're all number 10. This transit is also highly important to many cultures. For example, Mayan prophecy stated that the world of new consciousness would be born, perhaps reborn on the occasion of the Venus passage across the Sun. The 1769 transit was even more important because during the transit there was a solar eclipse 5 hours later. I guess many would have considered that an omen of sorts. Putting on my tinfoil hat, I would certainly believe the fact that Australia was directly discovered after these two significant astrological events. To those that believe in the importance of such things would consider it a significant sign. Perhaps this explains for the occultist fascination with Australia as being significant planetary location for the occult activities. And we also have, I don't believe it's gravity. I think I know what a gravity is, but I'm not saying it. But we actually have low rates of gravity in the centre of Australia, very low. In 1810, the British sent the first British military governor, Major General Lachlan Macquarie. Macquarie is regarded as one of the many as the real founder of Australia as a country. Macquarie became a Freemason in January 1793 at Bombay in Lodge Number 1. Number 139 on the register of the English Modern Grand Lodge. On the 2nd of March 1845, sorry, my headphone battery died. On the 2nd of March 1845, the non-first resident building was built on limestone plains, St. John's Church, which lies adjacent to St. Anzac Parade. This is a Church of England. The Church of England church is allegedly the Church of the United Grand Lodge of Freemasonry. Now, I didn't know this until I'd read this before. And I was baptized in under the Church of England. So where do I stand now? How do I get out of that one? In 1887, to mark the centenary, Britain sent its most senior metropolitan politician and most senior officer of the Freemasonry United Grand Lodge of England, Lord Carnarvon, on a 4-month visit to Australia. Lord Carnarvon's name was Henry Howard Monnox Herbert IV, Earl of Carnarvon. Lord Carnarvon served his colonial secretary in 2 administrations, and he was the man responsible for federating Britain's remaining North American colonies into the country of Canada. He was also responsible for keeping close personal contacts with colonial administrators in the white settlement colonies of North America, Canada, Australia, South Africa. The official capacity of the trip was set the stage for Australian Federation, but he spent most of his trip trying to federate the Freemason societies of each state in Australia, several which had gone rogue to the wishes of the United Grand Lodge in England. When Carnarvon told Prince of Wales of his decision to go to Australia, it was the Prince who finally gave him specific imperial commission, who probably asked him to look into a suggestion or a solution to the Masonic problems in New South Wales and Victoria as well, because they wanted to have the capital city, and then they were fighting over who was going to have the parliament. Originally, the parliament was in Melbourne, but some of them were held in Adelaide, but they were arguing over who was going to do what. So during his engagement, Carnarvon acknowledged that the magic word federation had been talked about in England, but he did not give away plans for the colonies publicly. In defining federation, Carnarvon said it must be based on loyalty to the sovereign to foster the mutual advantages and common interests on the other. Therefore, Australia would not be granted federation until the Freemason state lodges were loyal to the Crown. Carnarvon's visit succeeded in the creation of the United Grand Lodge of Victoria, with the Prince of Wales as its grand patron. The only rogue lodge left was in New South Wales, and on December 29, 1887, Carnarvon met with John Williams, the Grand Master of the Rogue Lodge in New South Wales, whom, after the interview, was persuaded to turn over control to the Prince of Wales. I guess Carnarvon was made a compelling offer too good to refuse. I would suggest there was more of a threat made. The UGLE, the United Grand Lodge of England, met on the 5th of December that year, 1888. It anonymously approved Carnarvon's proposal that it should immediately recognise the United Grand Lodge of New South Wales that had been inaugurated in August, and of which Carrigan had been installed as the first Grand Master on the 18th of September. Lord Carnarvon's visit succeeded in bringing all Masonic lodges in Australia under control under the Grand Master of the United Grand Lodge of England, and the Federation of Australian Colonies was then allowed to proceed. See, Australia wasn't allowed to be a federation until 1901, and they had been going on since the late 1870s through the 80s, 90s, early 1900s to actually get the federation. And the federal police was created in a town not far from where I used to live in Warwick when a man threw an egg at the prime minister, and the police were there, and he threw the egg at the prime minister. It hit his top hat or something and knocked it off. And the prime minister said, "Are you going to arrest that man?" And he turned around and said, "I'm a state police officer. You're federal. I can't do anything about it." So that was when the federal police were created in Australia. Okay. Um, Carnarvon decided that self-governing lodges, colonies linked with Britain by loyalty was the strongest template to ensure their control of a country would not disintegrate over time, as had occurred in other great historical empires. So a single United Grand Lodge of Australia was never created. Why is this important? In my research, I discovered the King Governor General, or the state governors in Australia, often automatically become leaders of the lodges in their states. Sir Henry Parkes, our famous Federation father, had been loyal to the English monarchy and the UGL of England. Parkes was knighted by the English monarchy, awarding him the highest possible honours of Knight Commander of the Order of St. Michael and St. George, and they use St. George in their thing. 1877, the Knight Grand Cross in the same order in 1888. Parkes was never officially recognised as a Mason, but he worked hand in hand with Carnarvon in staging Australia's Federation. So after the Federation, the first Australian Parliament was dominated by Freemasons. In our first House of Representatives, 30 of its 75 members were confirmed Freemasons. They included future Prime Ministers George Reid, Edmund Barton, Joseph Cook. Sir Edmund Barton was initiated into the Freemasonry at Australian Lodge of Harmony, number 556, on the 30th of March, 1878, and in 1901 became Australia's first Prime Minister. He was knighted in 1902. Anyway, the point to all of this is that the political parties running our government were created by the Freemason societies to serve as a public front to their hidden organisations. Political parties serve to give the public perception of freedom only. We never hear who really decides the policies created by the political parties, so it's highly conceivable that the men behind the scenes calling the shots were, and still are. The sad reality and the provable fact, if you do your research, is Australia was never going to be granted federation unless those running the entire system were loyal to the power groups of England. That fact is a federation was symbolic, where the control of Australia remained under Britain. All that changed is the control went from overt to covert in the minds of people, though we were free to choose the candidates suggested by the political parties created by these controlling groups, and of course not free to choose the policy created by either. Oh, and if you don't vote, you get fined as well. You have to vote. Yeah, if you don't vote in Australia, you get fined. You can even get jail over it. Anyway, what does this have to do with Canberra? 1893, one Walter Burley Griffin was filled with wonder as he attended the Chicago World Fair, a trip that motivated him to become an architect. The World's Fair transitioned a new era in architecture, led by prominent architecture Daniel Burnham. There's Burnham out of the Star Trek, Michael Burnham. Yeah, Burnham. Burnham was a member of the Swedenborgian Church. His father, a minister in it. There was a movement created by Emanuel Swedenborg following the Protestant breakaway from Rome. Without going into detail, you can research it yourself. Swedenborg's movement was a persecutor to the creation of the Freemason movements in later years. If you research more, you find Freemasonry is a continuation of the ancient Rosicrucian, before that the Knights Templar, Hermeticism, Gnostics, ancient Kabbalah, Mertherism, and so forth. Burnham was an architect for the world's first steel-framed skyscraper, a 22-story Grand Masonic Temple in Chicago. Yes, the world's first skyscraper was a Masonic temple. I thought I saw skyscrapers in Italy or something that were very, very old, in the paintings of the Renaissance period. Burnham and Ulster were accredited with ushering the city's beautiful movement that influenced modern city planning. Burnham later went on revitalizing Washington, D.C.'s layout and now famous memorial parks, all of which is well established by many researchers, contains lots of sacred geometry and perhaps occult significance. Despite all that, Burnham was a huge influence to Griffin. Other prominent architect peer of Burnham was Lewis Sullivan, famous for the saying, "Form follows function." After leaving school, Griffin was hired as a new draftsman of the Paris School, group of architects inspired by Lewis Sullivan and led by Frank Lloyd Wright. Sullivan was a frequent visitor to the Chicago Architectural Club, and it was there Griffin met Sullivan in 1900 and formed a friendship with him. Griffin wholeheartedly embraced the principles of Louis Sullivan, as did many of her colleagues in Perry School. Sullivan was considered one of the great opponents of usage of geometry and architecture. Sullivan used geometry for the control of pattern and textile in detail, and for control of the organic integration of ornament with the building form. Sullivan was the first influential American architect to reject Baroque arts due to its cultural inappropriateness to America. When Sullivan broke away from the old traditions, he became the leader of professionalism of American-based democratic architecture, and therefore he led the rise of the Chicago progressives. Dominating their mindset was ushering in a new form of democracy, simply a veiled system of public freedom controlled covertly by the Freemason societies. Lord Sullivan is a confirmed Freemason and was a mentor to Griffin. Griffin is not a confirmed Freemason, but he associated with his members into his architectural clubs in Chicago, who all were. Leaves no doubt that he was part of the same group, but as far as the public record goes, Griffin had been made to seem on his own, unattached to any specific group or agenda, when he was anything but. From Sullivan, Griffin learnt how the principles of symbolism and geometry could begin to meet those of nature, something the Baroque arts could not really achieve. Sullivan taught Griffin the understanding on how to use rational thought process in commitment of organic unity and the practice of architecture as an individual's creative art. Griffin had what could be considered obsessive fascination with atmosphere created by architecture. His interest had deviated from architecture towards landscape architecture, using Sullivan's principles in the city design. Instead of creating a temple in a building as his mentors had done, he wanted to create a city as a temple. The leading men of the Architectural Club of Chicago were all heavily integrated into the Freemason Masonic Society of America. Burnham and Sullivan changed the landscape of America. Griffin's last major commission and his greatest architectural development prior to winning the competition to design Canberra was the contribution to the development of the Perry houses in Mason City of Iowa. To date, Mason City contains the most Perry-style houses ever constructed in America and is home to the largest Freemason community, hence the name of the town. I didn't know that. Wow. I wonder if they were all built by kid homes. Wow, I wonder. They probably were built by kid homes. Both Walter and Marion Griffin were Theosophists. The spiritual beliefs of Theosophy are heavily aligned with those of Freemasonry. Primarily the belief that Lucifer as the true God, they need a path that the way to return to the great world teacher, the next Christ type person. Yeah, no, thank you. Griffin's wife Marion is also credited with huge contribution to the design of Canberra. Marion had great admiration for Anne Besant. She established the first overseas lodge of International Order of Co-Freemasonry, a Freemasonry lodge that allowed women to become members. Besant also took over the leadership of Theosophy following the death of its original leader, Helena Blavatsky. Helena Blavatsky's teachings inspired Adolf Hitler, who, as it turns, was outfinanced by the Rothschilds to create the Second World War. Hitler was a Rothschild. They were all related. They were all second, first, third cousins. All of them. The swastika was simply an ancient symbol of Theosophy. No, Alan has told us what the swastika is. A dear friend of Besant was Patrick Giddels, another close member of Walter Burley Griffin, who had befriended Griffin well before the design of Canberra. Officially, the Griffins are not considered to have been Theosophists until the 1930s, when they moved to Sydney to create Theosophy community suburb up there. But it is really well clear that they were dealing in circles of the Theosophists as early as the 1900s. I'm sorry, I can't quite say that word. Some words I just can't say. I'm sorry. On a side note, the co-founder was Charles Leadbeater, who had an obsession with Sydney, moving his whole life there on the belief that the emergence of the divine church with the divine leader would in turn lead to the world to illumination. Leadbeater was a priest of the Church of England, the Freemason Church. I'm really upset about that. I'm going to have to look into that. Also, when Cook landed with those first fleet of prisoners, they actually killed them. They didn't set the first fleet to work. They actually sacrificed the first fleet. Theosophy was discredited when their forecasted world teacher failed to emerge through their prepared vessels. The body of Didu Krishnamurti, oh gosh, when he failed to allow his consciousness to be pushed out so the world leader could come into his body. Instead, theosophy repackaged itself into other forms. The Freemasons were taking the upper echelons, not your typical Rotary Lions Club Freemasonry stooges, continue to forge their preparations. Are the Lions Club Freemasons? Are the Rotaries Freemasons? Can anyone tell me? Do they know? That concerns me because my dad was a Lions Club. Leadbeater moved to Sydney and his interest in Australia was based on his historic beliefs where he proclaimed Australia to be a place where the new Aryan sub-race would evolve. In his series of lectures delivered in Sydney in August 1915, Bishop Leadbeater proclaimed Australia and New Zealand as the home of the new sub-race he had detected in Australia. Children and young people of distinctly new type, new antipodal human type characterized by intuition and the power of synthesis. What is that? Altering our body? Whatever that means. Secret groups were created within secret groups to prepare adepts for the coming. The Order of the Star of the East, the Universal Co-Masonic Order. This was particularly the case in Sydney, where Leadbeater settled in 1914. Clairvoyant and occultist of particular genus, Leadbeater was an Anglican curate when he joined the Theosophical Society in 1883 and never lost his enthusiasm for the priesthood and the high church ritual. In 1917, he was instrumental in establishing the Liberal Catholic Church as a parallel organisation to the Theosophical Society, with himself consecrated to the Episcopate, and the regional bishop of Australasia through the appropriately authenticated form of the apostolic succession. Leadbeater explained that Australia needed to prepare itself for a world leader. Oh, ah. He held that, despite distance and small population, the antipodes provide a favourable site for inauguration of a new era of brotherhood and cooperation, be either near decadent like Britain or overblown by capitalist pride like America. I don't mean to offend my friends here. Not yet divided into unworkably democratic systems by two young souls. There was cruelty and reverse class legislation, but the wholesome environment held promise. In Leadbeater's view, it would be important to purify child rearing practice by abstinence from alcohol, meat, tobacco, and educate the next generation correctly. The reward would be the coincidence of a new subrace and a world teacher in 15 to 20 years' time. By embracing techniques of physical and mental purification, Leadbeater believed in a couple of generations of the whole of Australia would be controlled by new people who would constitute what in Europe we should call the Crestus of the country and say that it's the best type. During this period of the Theosophical Society, leaders call Australia to build itself forward. Purified patriotism, the promotion of the noble type Australian citizen, virtually Australian, eagerly conscious of Australia's specific place and part in building of the future, no less eagerly conscious of the wider and an equally vital citizenship involved in Australia's membership of the British Commonwealth, and recognising, too, there is a world citizenship, the obligations of which may longer no be ignored. Anyway, the point is the Theosophists have earmarked Australia as home for the future new race and therefore as a capital of the new world. Canberra was being seen to be the spiritual home for this. It was confirmed that all Griffith's research and interests were in Theosophist orders such as Patrick Geddes and people like Sir Norman Lockyer, who were world leaders in understanding ancient auxiliary and symbolism, the two most prominent features of Griffith's plan for Canberra. Central to Griffith's belief system can be summarized as Griffin understood the greatest amphitheatres of old ancient cities and sites were organizing principles directly related to astrology on the axial alignments towards this. By organizing buildings with not only natural landscapes but with the heavens, this is how ancient men liked themselves with the gods of the heavens. Griffin was transcendental idealist, and it was his desire to forge a new form of democratic environment where men could work in conjunction with nature in order to maximize spirituality. Griffin's conclusion was that a truly democratic architecture was achievable only through the laws of nature. So the competition to design Canberra was launched. Due to some unknown agenda, King O'Malley wanted to select the winning entry himself, and this upset the local and British architectural societies as they forbid their architects from entering the competition. This competition decimated any quality entries, leaving Griffith's design to essentially stand alone. I'm not going into too much detail on this. Suffice to say, it seems apparent that this was all contrived to give public perception of a fair competition and an unbiased selection, but they got the des- design that was always conceived for the city. Doing it this way has people ask a lot less questions. Primarily because Griffin's design was horrendously expensive and it didn't make sense on a lot of levels. Despite years of protests by those dealt with the building and the thing, eventually the government, or more to the point, the hidden controlling groups, got their way. In studying this, I found that a lot of changes were allowed to remain in Griffith's design, but not the government's was steadfast in retaining the geometry of the plan, even when it was not practical to do so. Griffin's design required at the time major earthworks that were literally impossible with technology of the time. It did not make economical sense. After World War One hit, a lot of compromises were made in the plan, largely the more desirable aspects such as high density community based stuff along the essential axes and more desirable aspects such as oh, and Constitution Avenue, but never really with the main geometrical aspects of the plan. All they did was strip out the good stuff and left a giant void of a city with no soul. I guess that's the point to begin with. Instead of the community centric aspects, the government instead installed the war memorial at the center of the plan, adding the symbolic and sad aspect to the center of the plan. It makes more sense that this symbolizes a ritual sacrifice. In fact, the war memorial has been designed as an occult ritual edifice. And it is. It's huge, that war memorial. It was absolutely huge. In order to protect, here, where are we up to? The early 1920s geometry plan of Canberra was gazetted into Australian law, protected from ever being tampered with or modified, even if a serving government wishes to do so. For that to happen, it would require permission from the Governor General and the power brokers in Britain. Truly a remarkable thing to do, and no one has really explained what the point of the geometry is and why it's so important. In order to protect the geometry, the Central National Authority was created, who quickly designated the entire aspect of Griffin's geometries under the auspices of the Central National Zone, where no change could be made without their say-so. In a 2004 report, the NCA had over 74 references to symbolism of their Canberra design. A question I began to ask myself: why was the geometry so important? What purpose did it serve? And how does this tie in with Theosophy, the Freemasons, and whatnot? Theosophy is considered as an occult movement and was a persecutor to the modern day New Age movement. It deals heavily in nature based spirituality and worship of Lucifer as a true god. The beliefs are inherited from an ancient Kabbalah type historic and hermetic movements. These movements practice ritual heavily, and they believe they derive their practices from the mystery religions of Sumeria, Babylon, Persia, Egypt, Greece, and Rome. They use their sacred geometric principles in their ritual ceremonies in order to evoke spiritual entities. Central to their rituals, they use the four primary elements, the pentagram, the astrological alignments. Going back to why John Lotsky needed to find limestone plans for the city, it's simple. Limestone is crystalline quartz. Crystals are used to amplify energy in ritual. So building a city over a giant outpouring of crystalline rock assist in this energy creation. Geometry is central to the ritual energy work because it creates energetic forms that allow them to connect with certain entities. Therefore, they like to use the vice Pisces, and the pentagram as their two major components. Suffice to say that these are the two symbols the most prominent in Griffin's design. The design of Canberra has been created as a giant ritual edifice, and it is their belief that the city serves as a giant platform for administrating the spiritual energies. This was the inherent design guiding Griffin's spiritual philosophy. His entire context was creating an environment that emphasizes energy. Some would consider it to be dark and negative. So, yeah. It's got in the building, it's got a pyramid on top of it. It has I'll just find the page and share it. It's just really interesting how all of these symbols fall into play. Yeah, I think I'll show you that one. Which one is it? Hey Tony, see Tony's Coffee House is here. How you going? And Fractional Dust, great to see you. And Alan, hi. I saw you before, but it's great to see you here. Thank you everyone for supporting me. And yeah, I know I've been quiet. It's just been very hectic with the boy. We've been doing exams and that sort of stuff and getting him ready for exams. Okay, I think this page should be it. Okay, so this one here shows how they've set it all up. I can't get it quite right. It keeps going up and down. So yeah, it shows all the setups and the designs and how everything falls. So there's supposed to be a woman in the bosom, and then she's giving birth to a child, and this intersecting where the two circles is where the strongest energy is. They have granite pillars that go right down to the basement, and they have the pyramid on the top, massive pyramid on the top. It's just unreal, this building. So, also when the Melbourne lockdown first happened, there was a Masonic, like a pentagram done, pentagram symbol. So this is like a pyramid overlaid over the top of it. So you got the eye, the head, and then it works down the levels. It's also got a goat, too. I saw that one before. So you got your pyramids. There is just so much occult in this. It's unreal. And when it was being built, I'll show you this one. It was really strange. When it was being built, they actually had problems over the wages, and the unions got together and all that kind of stuff, and there were riots. There were huge riots. This was in 1996. They pretty much trashed the place.
It was the demonstration that got away.
Yeah,
Rally against the
smashed it, and
government's
they
industrial
actually kicked
relations
the front
plans,
this
hijacked
door
by
here.
union and
They
Aboriginal
kicked it
anger
in and
over
broke
John
it. So I
Howard's
dare
big
say they would have
pre-budget
improved
cuts.
it after that.
Parliament's
But
imposing
yeah, all
outer
these
doors proved
workers
as flimsy as a
were
curtain.
upset about the wages.
Security staff and police
And this was
rushed to
also
shore up
like
the
at the
inner
time when they were
doors.
building the Snowy River one, where
Mosh
they
pit
had
protest
10,000
became
workers.
an
They used
organised assault.
immigrant workers for
The
that.
just
If
renovated
they went
Parliament
missing
House
or something
shop
happened,
proved the
you
line
didn't
of
have to
least
explain it to
resistance,
family and pay
and
compo.
demonstrators burst into the building's
Yep, they're
marble
busting in. Now you
hall.
can see this floor. There, the floor's
Despite
all black and
demonstrators
white.
burst
It's all Masonic with triangles. These pillars go down really deep, and then it's got like a reflection pond similar. So this is what they did to
hundreds
all
of
the
thousands
shops
of
and everything.
dollars
They
run
just
up before
trashed
the
everything.
demonstrators were forced back.
This is why I
Police
reckon
claimed the
Parliament is closed
protesters
at the
breached an
moment.
agreement.
I really
violent
do.
scenes just 4
I have a feeling that's why it's closed. Which one is it? This one? Yes, that's the one I want to show you next. So go to that. Okay, that one. Hope everyone's having a fantastic day. My day's been pretty good so far. That's the one. Share that, share that. Okay. So Google Maps view of the Australian Department of Defence headquarters. They're pentagons. This is the Department of Defence. And even look at the shape when it's laid out. Now to the bottom right of the triangle, City Hall. It's built in the shape of hexagon. Hexagon meaning is the same as a square. Basically, this relates to the planet Satan, aka Saturn. Stay with me, it's a high level overview, though thoroughly explained. Saturn is connecting. Sorry, my headphones died again. Connecting the entire blog on its own. So these cubes are all over Australia. There's a big black cube in Melbourne. When I was down in Melbourne, I saw it. These are some of the squares spread part of the parts of the world. They also have other synonyms near them. Fancy finding one in Canberra. The squares are frequently found in Freemason symbols. More squares, black squares. Now, Parliament House was not always located at the top of the triangle. It originally located further down. The new Parliament House was moved to the top of the triangle and opened in 1988. Why was it moved, you ask? Great question. To understand this, you must first understand the significance of this. One must understand the importance of the eye of providence, the all-seeing eye. The Eye of Providence was appointed by the Freemasons around the same time that the Illuminati infiltrated them, which happened around 1797. So it was like the Jacobsons joined the Rosicrucians, and then the Rosicrucians and the Jacobsons joined the Freemasons. You had the Templars and all that before that. There are so many groups. New Parliament House was moved to the top of the triangle, exactly in the middle of the Eye of Providence. Why? To send a message to the rest of the world that the Illuminati headquarters was now in Australia. Too far-fetched, keep reading. If this pyramid on top of the Parliament House is enough to make you feel uneasy, let's take a look under of the pyramid. So you got your two pillars, and look here. You see it? How sad's that? It's like the reflection pool. This looks disturbingly similar to the one in Manhattan, New York. This memorial fountain for 9/11, built in 1988, before 9/11 in 2001. Yeah, I don't believe this Jasara shit. It won't happen. Don't even get your hope up. It will not happen. And what do we have here for good measure on the wall? The ancient wall to this. There's two pillars. So symbolism in Melbourne. The royal family name. This video that was supposed to be a naked child climbing out the window of Buckingham Palace is fake. It is an actual prankster mob, and it is fake. If you look at the video and you look at Buckingham Palace's actual brickwork, it's not. It's fake. It was actually filmed at a hotel in Italy. The family name Cavendish is not so famous, but Catherine Cavendish married into the Kennedy family to become Catherine Kennedy, another top name in the 13 Illuminati bloodlines. Fritz Springmenger is the author of The Bloodlines of Illuminati. Certainly has done his research on the subject if you want some light reading. And if more pyramids aren't enough, Collins is another name in the top 13 bloodlines of the pyramids. Now, wasn't that the Miami building collapse on Collins Street? And for this irony, the statue is ironically placed right out the front of the House of Parliament, Melbourne. Like a Naga, half serpent, half human. Canberra is the close to Melbourne and close to New Zealand. New Zealand is one of the main. Yeah, okay. Yeah, whatever. Whatever. You're never going to know about that shit. It's possible, it's plausible, but why waste your energy? Really? You're not going to get far. You're not going to get anything done. So yeah, I just wanted to share that one of that one. But I thought they were interesting. One more, where's that one? Just trying to find something, sorry. Yeah, I can't seem to find it. Yeah. So this was the original one that I shared. I will leave the links in the description for you all. But I just don't know how a person can be in Chicago, draw this within 8 weeks or not even see the land and know that there were ley lines and energy coming from the mountains. How did they know? And how did they draw the Southern Cross like that? Or was the city already there? You know? It's like the star forts. Like we know some of the star forts line up in the constellations. Do the cities too? Do they? That's what I've been questioning. Are the cities lined up somehow with these constellations? So, all right, my lovelies, I'm going to have to love you and leave you. And thank you to all of you who are here watching, supporting 14 at the moment. Appreciate that. Yeah, hopefully once these exams die down, I should be able to get online a bit more. So, but thank you to everyone. Just God bless you all. Raise your vibrations. It's really gonna get crazy soon. And yeah, just raise your vibrations. You know. And I'm here if anyone ever needs to talk or anything or feels down. Just send me a message or direct message me on Twitter if you can't get through or on email. My email's on my about page. So yeah. Wherever you are in the world watching, thank you. Raise your vibrations and much love. Bye now.